I'm Nancy Mitchell, and this is how my dream house became the centerpiece of the biggest family drama I've ever experienced. My husband Tom and I worked our butts off for years to afford our home. We're both corporate lawyers, not the fancy type you see in movies, but the kind that spend countless hours reviewing contracts and dealing with paperwork. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and we had a clear goal in mind, our perfect house. "What do you think about this one?" Tom asked me one evening, showing me yet another listing on his laptop. We were sitting in our tiny apartment, surrounded by takeout containers and case files. I leaned in to look. Wait, this might be it. The house was exactly what we'd been searching for, a beautiful two-story colonial with a wraparound porch and plenty of room for the family we hoped to have someday. The moment we walked through the front door for the viewing, I knew it was meant to be ours. "I can already see where everything would go," I told Tom, spinning around in what would become our living room. "We could put a reading nook by that window, and the wall space would be perfect for my paintings." The next few months were a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings with contractors, and endless trips to home improvement stores. I took charge of the renovation process, much to Tom's relief. He's brilliant with legal documents, but hopeless with color schemes. I designed every room with care, choosing each paint color, light fixture, and piece of furniture deliberately. The walls of our living room and study soon displayed my own paintings, landscapes, and abstracts I'd created over the years. 3 years passed quickly in that house. We settled into a comfortable routine, hosted dinner parties for colleagues, and created countless memories. Our home became our sanctuary, especially after long days at the office. Life was good. Simple, but good. We had everything we'd worked for, and we appreciated it all the more because we'd earned it ourselves. No handouts, no family money, just hard work and careful planning. Then my phone rang one Sunday morning. Mom's name flashed across the screen. "Nancy, sweetie, I have wonderful news." Her voice was bubbling with excitement. I had no idea that this call would be the beginning of chaos. No idea that my sister Sarah's engagement would somehow turn my carefully crafted life upside down. But that's the thing about family, they have a way of complicating even the simplest things. "Can we talk about something important?" Mom asked, her voice taking on that tone she uses when she wants something. "It's about Sarah's engagement." "Nancy, honey," Mom continued, her voice getting that sugary sweet tone she uses when she wants something. "Sarah's fiancé, well, his family is quite well off." I sat down at my kitchen counter, already sensing this wasn't just a casual conversation about Sarah's engagement. "That's great, Mom. When's the wedding?" She cleared her throat. "Well, about that. Before we set the date, we need to have a formal meeting with his parents. You know, the traditional way." "Okay," I said slowly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "The thing is," Mom paused, "could we maybe have this meeting at your house?" I nearly dropped my coffee mug. "What?" "It's just that our apartment, you know how small it is. And with Robert's parents being so wealthy, I'm worried it might affect things." "Mom," I said firmly, "you want me to pretend my house belongs to you and Sarah?" "Just for one meeting," she pleaded. "Sarah's fiancé's parents are very traditional, very focused on status. I don't want them looking down on our family." I pinched the bridge of my nose. This is wrong on so many levels. You can't start a marriage based on lies. "It's not exactly a lie," Mom argued. "More like a temporary arrangement. They'll be moving to Boston after the wedding anyway. We'll rarely see them, and I'll explain everything later." "And what about Sarah? She's okay with this deception?" Mom's voice brightened. "Oh, she thinks it's a brilliant idea. Please, Nancy, do this for your sister." I paced around my kitchen, my mind racing. "Let me talk to Tom." That evening, I explained everything to my husband. To my surprise, he didn't immediately shoot down the idea. "It's just one meeting," he said thoughtfully. "And it would mean a lot to your parents." "Are you serious?" I stared at him. "You're actually considering this?" He shrugged. Sometimes keeping peace in the family is worth a small compromise. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The meeting was set for the following Saturday. I spent the entire week cleaning and preparing, feeling increasingly uneasy about the whole situation. When the day arrived, everyone showed up right on time: my parents, Sarah and her fiancé Robert, and his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Davidson. They were exactly as Mom had described: wealthy, well-mannered, and clearly used to the finer things in life. "What a lovely home," Mrs. Davidson commented, admiring our living room. Before I could respond, Sarah jumped in. "Thank you. I've always believed in creating a warm, welcoming space." I nearly choked on my wine. But that was just the beginning. As we gave them a tour, Sarah played the perfect hostess, discussing her decorating choices and future renovation plans. Then came the moment that made my blood boil. "And this is my sister Nancy and her husband Tom," Sarah said casually, gesturing toward us. "They'd been staying with us for a while. You know how hard it is for young couples just starting out." I felt Tom's hand squeeze my arm, warning me to stay quiet. But watching my sister stand there, playing lady of the manor while describing us as charity cases she'd taken in out of the kindness of her heart, it took every ounce of self-control not to speak up. The dinner was going surprisingly well, despite my growing discomfort with Sarah's performance as lady of the house. Tom kept shooting me sympathetic glances across the table as we finished our dessert. I thought we were almost in the clear when Sarah suddenly sat up straighter, her eyes sparkling with what I recognized as her brilliant idea of look. "You know," she announced, setting down her wine glass with a flourish, "instead of renting some impersonal venue, we should have the wedding right here." I inhaled sharply, my fork clattering against my plate. My eyes shot to Mom, who was making frantic, stay quiet gestures while trying to maintain her smile. "Actually," I managed to say, keeping my voice steady, "I don't think that's the best idea. The layout isn't really suited for a wedding reception. The cleanup alone would be—" "Oh, don't be silly," Sarah cut me off with a wave of her hand. "It won't be that many people. Just family and close friends." "Still," I persisted, "there's the parking situation, and the neighbors to consider. A proper venue would be much more." "Robert's parents are giving us a honeymoon trip to the Maldives," Sarah interrupted again, beaming at the Davidsons. "We'll leave right after the reception, so we won't even be here for the cleanup." Great. So not only did she want to commandeer my house, but she was planning to leave the mess for me too. Mrs. Davidson looked around appreciatively. "It really is a beautiful space for a wedding. So much character. And it would save quite a bit on venue costs," Sarah added, giving Robert's parents her most winning smile. "We could put that money toward other aspects of the celebration." I watched in horror as the Davidsons nodded approvingly. My house was being volunteered for a wedding venue, and I couldn't even object without exposing the whole charade. Then Mrs. Davidson noticed one of my landscape paintings above the fireplace. "Oh, what a gorgeous piece. The light is captured so beautifully. Who's the artist?" Before I could open my mouth, Sarah jumped in. "Actually, I painted that. I've been painting since I was little." I felt the blood drain from my face. That painting had taken me months to complete. It was from our trip to Maine last summer, a sunrise over the coast that I'd worked on meticulously to get just right. "You're so talented," Mrs. Davidson exclaimed. "Would you consider painting something for me? Perhaps a seascape? I've always loved ocean views." "Of course," Sarah agreed enthusiastically. "Consider it my wedding gift to you. I'll have it ready before the big day." I gripped my napkin under the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Tom's hand found my knee and squeezed it gently, but even his touch couldn't calm the rage building inside me. "Have you completely lost your mind?" I exploded as soon as the Davidsons' car pulled away. "A wedding? In my house? And now you're claiming my paintings are yours?" Sarah's bottom lip trembled in that practiced way she's perfected since childhood. "Nancy, please. It's just for one day. You heard them, they love the house." "Because they think it's yours," I shot back. This whole thing has gone way too far. Mom stepped between us. Nancy, sweetie, try to understand. We can't afford to rent a proper venue, but we've already promised the Davidsons we'd contribute to the wedding. That's not my problem. I turned to Dad, hoping for support, but he just stood there looking uncomfortable. Please, Nancy, Sarah begged. It'll only be a few hours. Just family and close friends, I promise. Maybe 50 people, tops. I shook my head firmly. No, absolutely not. That's when Sarah changed tactics, turning to Tom with her best puppy dog eyes. Tom, you understand, don't you? You've always been like a brother to me. I watched in disbelief as my husband's resolve crumbled. Well, he said hesitantly, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Just one afternoon. Tom, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'll make it up to you, he whispered, but the damage was done. Sarah's face lit up with triumph. Oh, and Nancy, don't forget about the seascape for Mrs. Davidson. That can be your wedding gift to me. I stood there, mouth agape, as she practically skipped out the door. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of Sarah's reign of terror. Over the next few weeks, she treated my house like her personal photo studio. Every day brought new social media posts, getting ready for my big day in my dream home, or can't wait to say I do in this gorgeous space. Then came the day before the wedding. I was working in my home office when the front door burst open. The decorating team is here, Sarah announced, leading in a woman laden with bags and boxes. Before I could protest, they were hammering nails into my carefully painted walls, draping gauzy fabric across my windows, and rearranging my furniture. Stop, I cried as they started hanging fairy lights from my vintage chandelier. You can't just. Oh, relax, Sarah rolled her eyes. I'll fix any damage after the wedding. Stop being so uptight. Uptight? I watched in horror as they pushed my antique reading chair into a corner to make room for what appeared to be a flower arch. This is my house. It's just for one day, Sarah said dismissively, directing the decorator to hang more tulle from my staircase. Everything needs to be perfect for the photos. Crash. The sound of shattering ceramic made my heart stop. The blue and white vase, a piece I'd found at an antique market in Providence, lay in pieces near the fireplace. Oops, Sarah said, barely glancing at the fragments. We'll get you a new one. That vase was one of a kind. My voice shook with anger. God, Nancy, it's just a stupid vase. Stop being so materialistic. Sarah rolled her eyes, and then suddenly brightened. Oh, we need to prepare the bedroom. Before I could stop her, she was charging up the stairs. I followed, horrified, as she burst into my bedroom where Tom was still sleeping after his night shift. Up and at 'em, she chirped, yanking open the curtains. Tom jolted awake, confused and squinting. What's going on? Sarah tossed a package of new bedding at me. Here, put these on. I got the highest thread count they had, perfect for a wedding night. Wedding night? I sputtered. In our bedroom? Well, duh. It's the master bedroom. Sarah was already rummaging through my closet, pulling out pillows. We'll need to move these, maybe add some rose petals, ooh, and some romantic lighting. Where exactly do you expect us to sleep? I demanded. She shrugged, not even turning around. There's a Motel 6 off the highway. Or you could crash at Mom and Dad's. I looked at Tom, who was sitting up in bed, his guilt-ridden expression matching his bedhead. This was all his fault for giving in to her demands. Sarah, he started, clearly trying to backpedal, maybe we should. Oh, she spun around suddenly. Nancy, where's the seascape? Mrs. Davidson asked about it yesterday. She's so excited to see it at the wedding. The absolute audacity of this woman. My sister. Standing in my bedroom, planning to kick us out of our own house, and now demanding artwork I never agreed to create. There is no seascape, I said coldly. And there never will be. Sarah's face froze. What do you mean? I mean I'm not painting anything. In fact, there won't be any wedding here tomorrow. You can't do that. Sarah's voice rose to a shriek. Watch me. This is my house, and I'm done with this charade. Sarah's face turned an alarming shade of red. She yanked her phone from her pocket and stabbed at the screen. Mom, she wailed into the phone. Nancy's ruining everything. She says we can't have a wedding here anymore. Nancy, are you there? Mom's voice crackled through Sarah's phone speaker. What's all this fuss about? The wedding's practically here. Just take a little trip to the mountains with Tom for the weekend. You two could use a romantic getaway. Something in my brain short-circuited. Wait, what do you mean, take a trip? Aren't we invited to the wedding? The silence on the other end was deafening. Well, Mom hesitated. It's a very intimate ceremony. We need to focus on impressing Robert's family, and... Are you telling me, I said slowly, my voice rising, that I'm not even invited to my sister's wedding? A wedding that's happening in my own house? Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically. Don't be so dramatic, Nancy. It's not like you're the most important person there. Robert's aunt is flying in from Switzerland, and his parents' friends are all very influential people. Your sister's right, Mom chimed in through the phone. We need to prioritize the guest list, and well, you understand, don't you? Tom, who had been quietly listening, suddenly stood up. This is absolutely ridiculous. You can't kick us out of our own house, and not even invite us to the wedding. I looked at my husband's outraged face, at my entitled sister, at the mess they'd made of my bedroom. And suddenly, something clicked in my mind. A plan started forming. You know what? I said, my voice surprisingly calm. You're right, I'm being silly about all this. Sarah's face lit up with surprise and triumph. Really? Finally, you're being reasonable. Yes, I smiled sweetly. You go ahead and finish decorating. Tom and I will head to the mountains for a romantic weekend. I caught Tom's confused look and gave him a subtle wink. His eyes widened slightly, but he played along. Here, I said, handing Sarah my house keys. Just make sure everything's cleaned up after. Of course, Sarah beamed, pocketing the keys. See? I knew you'd come around eventually. She and the decorator spent another hour putting final touches on their wedding wonderland, while Tom and I quietly packed overnight bags. When they finally left, Sarah was practically skipping with satisfaction. As soon as we got in our car, Tom turned to me. Okay, what are you planning? Because I know that look, and that wasn't surrender back there. I started the engine, a small smile playing on my lips. Just trust me, honey. Sometimes you have to let people think they've won, to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. By this time tomorrow, everyone will understand exactly whose house they'd been taking for granted. As we headed toward the mountains, I couldn't help but feel a little thrill of anticipation. Sarah thought she had won, but she had no idea what was coming. Sometimes being a lawyer has its advantages, especially when it comes to understanding property rights and security systems. The morning sun was streaming through our hotel room window when my phone rang. The security company's number flashed on the screen. Mrs. Mitchell? This is Derek from Home Shield Security. We've detected an entry alarm at your residence. The patrol is en route now. Thank you for letting me know, I replied, unable to suppress my smile. Please keep me updated. Tom looked up from his coffee. It's starting, isn't it? Before I could answer, my phone erupted again. This time it was Mom. Nancy, she screamed into the phone. What is the meaning of this? There are security guards here. The alarm won't stop. You need to call them right now and tell them you gave us permission to be here. Did I? I asked innocently. I don't recall giving anyone permission to use my house today. But you gave Sarah the keys. I gave Sarah keys, yes. That doesn't mean I gave permission for a wedding party to enter my private property. The security company called again while Mom was still spluttering. Mrs. Mitchell, we have a situation here. There's a group of people claiming they have permission to use the house for a wedding. They have keys, but no documentation. We need your confirmation. I absolutely did not give permission for anyone to use my house today, I said firmly. In fact, I'm quite concerned about this unauthorized entry. I could hear the chaos unfolding through the phone, Sarah's hysterical crying, guests murmuring in confusion, and the guard's professional but firm voice requesting everyone to step outside. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, Mrs. Davidson's voice, sharp with dawning realization. What do you mean this isn't your house? Ma'am, the security guard explained, this property belongs to Nancy and Thomas Mitchell. Without their explicit permission or presence, this gathering constitutes unauthorized entry. Sarah, Robert's voice cut through the commotion, you lied to my family? About owning this house? I can explain, Sarah wailed. Everyone will need to come down to the station to sort this out, another voice announced. Police had arrived. The next few hours were a parade of phone calls. The police confirming my statement that no, I hadn't authorized a wedding in my house. The security company updating me on the situation. And finally, a call from a very subdued mom. Your sister's been released with a warning, she said quietly. But, Robert, he called off the wedding. Said he couldn't marry someone who would build their relationship on lies. His parents are furious. They're calling us social climbers and frauds. I let that sink in for a moment. Well, aren't they right? Actions have consequences. Maybe Sarah learned something from this. After hanging up, I turned to Tom, who had been listening to my side of the conversations with growing amazement. You planned this all along, didn't you? He asked. From the moment you handed over those keys? Let's just say I knew exactly what would happen when they tried to enter a house with a state-of-the-art security system they didn't know existed. Tom shook his head, but he was smiling. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Tom and I returned home the next morning to find our house looking like an abandoned theater set. Tulle and fairy lights hung limply from the walls, wilting flowers scattered across the floor, and chairs arranged in neat rows for a ceremony that never happened. We spent the morning restoring our home to its former state, working in comfortable silence. Each decoration we removed felt like reclaiming a piece of our sanctuary. When we finally collapsed onto our couch, now back in its proper place, someone knocked at the door. It was Mom and Dad, looking like they'd aged 10 years overnight. How could you do this to your sister? Mom burst out before I could even invite them in. Do you have any idea how humiliated we all were? How could I? I repeated incredulously. How could you? You tried to steal my house for a wedding I wasn't even invited to. Dad stepped forward, his face stern. We've been talking, and if you don't apologize to your sister and make this right, you can forget about any inheritance. The family cabin, your grandmother's jewelry, all of it will go to Sarah. To their surprise, I laughed. A real, genuine laugh that felt like releasing years of pent-up frustration. Keep it, I said, gesturing around me. Everything in this house, everything Tom and I have, we earned ourselves. We don't need your inheritance, and we definitely don't need your approval of how we defend our home and our dignity. You've always been selfish, Mom spat. Always thinking you're better than everyone else with your fancy job and your big house. No, Mom. I just respect myself enough not to let people walk all over me, even family. Especially family. Then you're no longer part of this family, Dad declared. Don't call us, don't visit. You're no longer our daughter. They turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind them. The sound echoed through the house, but strangely, I felt no pain, only relief. Tom wrapped his arms around me. Are you okay? I leaned into his embrace. I meant what I said. We built this life together, honestly, and through hard work. No deception, no using people, no shortcuts. Sarah might have lost a fiancé, Tom mused, but maybe she gained a valuable lesson. I hope so. You can't build happiness on lies, whether it's a marriage or a family relationship. It all comes crumbling down eventually. We stood there in our restored living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together. On the walls, my paintings, my real paintings, caught the afternoon light. The furniture was back where it belonged. Everything was in its right place. You were right, you know, Tom said softly. The most important thing in a family is mutual respect. I nodded, thinking about the true meaning of family, not the one you're born into, but the one you choose to build, based on love, trust, and respect.